From our family at StoryOne
to your family,
we wish you
a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Welcome to the Story Lens podcast, where your story is our focus. We explore wealth, legacy, and purpose through a process that starts with deep listening and leads to one-of-a-kind strategies. At StoryOne, we believe the best planning begins with you.
Welcome back to the StoryOne podcast. I'm here with John Christensen, and we have a guest with us today, Rick Boxx, and we are just really excited to have him here. Rick is an entrepreneur, a former banker. He's been in ministry, founders. He's worked with business owners all over the country and really all over the world in his career, and just has some great insights that we're excited to engage in. Also, topic that's been a lot of his work lately and has been on our mind as well is just kind of what we call the great wealth transfer that's kind of happening in the U.S. right now. And so excited to jump into this conversation today. Again, thank you for joining us. If you can take a moment, share or like this podcast, it helps others find this content, and really helpful for us. We appreciate it. So with that said, Rick, again, thanks for being here. I'd love to
Thank you.
Just start off with just maybe a brief introduction of yourself and
Sure.
kind of the work that you do and what you spend your time thinking about.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, thanks for having me. And so I've been running a ministry called Unconventional Business Network for the last 23 years. And we're really focused on trying to help business leaders integrate their faith in the Bible into how they actually conduct business. Mm-hmm. We believe that the Bible is the best business book you'll ever get your hands on if people would just read it through the lens of a business person. Mm-hmm. And so we try and help teach people that God does have a calling and a purpose for them vocationally, and that He's given us a guidebook with great principles that are time-tested. And so we just try and help equip people with how do you practically apply the principles that we can learn in Scripture so that we're actually doing business in a way that would be honoring and glorifying to God.
Mm-hmm. And there's a few different ways for people to connect with you. So you can kind of walk through some of those just in case people want to reach out
sure.
and find you.
Yeah, so we host a lot of conferences and events in Kansas City and the Des Moines area, and then we do a national conference here that we call Faith Incorporated every year in late April. And so we have great speakers that come in from all around the country for that. And so we've used that as a way to connect people to kind of their purpose and hearing other people's story. And then content has always been really big, that we want to provide resources and content for people. And so I have a daily radio program on a couple hundred radio stations, as well as that content is also used as a daily email vignette. And it's been remarkable to see how God can take that and put it on different platforms. And so, you know, if you're familiar with the YouVersion Bible app, we, Lord willing, by the end of this year, we will surpass 500,000 subscribers to our reading plans just on that one app alone. And so it's just been remarkable there. So the content, there's plenty of ways that people can connect with us that way. And then we also have community groups. Mm-hmm. And so we have forum groups that is high quality video training content that we've developed that people can meet once a month. They can do that in a conference room in their business. Mm-hmm. We now also have churches that are hosting groups. And lately we've been seeing kind of an opportunity that I never dreamed possible was these large Fortune 500 companies. They're now allowing people to have what they call employee resource groups. And many of them say, well, if you can have a resource group for that or this or whatever, how about for Christians? But a lot of them don't have any content. And so we get calls. And so, you know, we've helped set up, you know, groups in you know, companies like Shell Oil and Abbott Laboratories, and, you know, different things like that. Yeah. And so it's been a lot of fun.
And then you've authored a few books as well.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I've written 7 books that either books or Bible studies.
Yeah. So Rick's kind of a celebrity in Kansas City. So we're very thankful to have him here.
So, Rick, think about Christian businessmen understanding like biblical principles being really important to their integrity, their faith, the way they think about their employees, their family. But rarely is it like, well, the Bible is this great business book, right? It's like, no, that's what EOS is, or that's what whatever is, right? So like, how did that framing come to be?
Well, for me, it really came out of my own life experiences because when I was in banking, I went to work for a bank president that was different than anybody I'd ever worked for. I started working for this guy, and I would go in and try and get decisions, and he would oftentimes quote me a proverb or tell me a parable and how I could apply it to my problem. And at that stage of my life, even though I'd been raised in the church, I'd been hiding out from God for a long time. And so that to me was just so odd. I mean, I remember just walking out going, did that guy really just pull a Bible out of me? Can he do that? But I'd be obedient and go do what he would recommend. And I just watched as it worked.
Yeah.
And we were hired to turn around a troubled bank. And I remember our bosses telling us, this is a 3-year journey. It'll take 3 years to get this profitable again. We did it in a year and a half, and it was really because of that bank president's servant leadership and just his wise biblical counsel and how we should do things.
So when you think about it, or the way you've been doing this for 23 years, like, is it something where you're trying to extract those principles and say, hey, this is how it works in practical application? Or is it more just your encouragement is, hey, business owners, spend time in the Word?
It's kind of both.
Yeah.
I mean, we feel like that there's a lot of people that talk about kind of faith at work from a theoretical or a theological. We really want to be the place that people can find it relevant and practical. And so we really try and take the principles or take a passage out of Scripture, and we talk about, hey, here's, like in my daily messages, I try and take a practical workplace story that somebody was struggling with this issue, but here's a biblical verse and a principle that you can derive from that and how you can practically apply it to help work through that situation. Yeah. And so we really want to be a place that helps people make it very relevant.
Yeah. So, are there some really through lines or themes that you see that are just really consistent with business owners, where you're like, this is just,
oh, sure,
this is just everywhere? So like, what are some of those?
Yeah, I mean,
how do you
the
think about
common
those?
ones I would say is conflict resolution. I mean, we all deal with people, and people are a messy group to deal with. Yeah. And so just trying to navigate conflict resolution. So, it's pretty common to pull on Matthew 18 and say, hey, first, before you start all this gossip stuff, go to that person one-on-one, clear the air, and if they don't listen to you and you feel like you still have more to say, grab someone else that has some authority over them and go two-on-one. And, so just using those kinds of tools to help people say, oh, yeah, I guess I shouldn't have gossiped that last time. And
well, and then the other interesting part a lot of times is when there's a lack of reconciliation. And that's one thing if you're at work and that person at work you deal with 8 hours a day.
Right.
A lot of these business owners, there's family members involved.
Oh, yeah.
That may or may not be in the business.
Yes.
Right. And so there's lots of times where we see broken relationships that could have been mended years prior had they tried to reconcile or had they actually, I mean, so it is like, so that's actually, it's more heartbreaking when it's family members that are feuding than it is just, coworkers or whatever.
Yeah, and at times it almost seems like it's even more common.
It is.
That it's family.
So.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. The silly things that we hear are about things that happened 50 years ago, and you're like,
still carrying that grudge.
Johnny was a football player, Shelley was a cheerleader, and for some reason, it's just like, why are we talking about this? That was 50 years ago.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 It's crazy.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Well, and even the work at faith, like, or faith at work movement, it's really interesting. Like my experience, like, came to know the Lord young in life, kind of reconnected in college. At that point, I thought everybody that was serious about their relationship with the Lord, you became a pastor, a young life leader, right?
Yeah.
FCA leader. And I had the opportunity to work for a business that was trying to instill the principles of Jesus, and it changed my life because I've always thought about numbers. I've always wanted to be in business. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So to work at a place where they were trying to practice those principles, it was eye-opening to me. Not to mention the fact that it opened my eyes to the ability to, like, I can be in business
Yes.
and practice these principles. So for me, it's difficult to imagine disconnection,
Right.
Where lots of people have their
Yeah.
faith, but they actually don't practice it at work.
Right.
So like to have those integrated is actually a really beautiful thing.
And that's a big part of, I feel, our calling as a ministry, because Barna Research did some research on this, and they surveyed Christians, people that profess to be going to church, profess to be Christians, and they discovered that only 28% of those people actually integrate their faith in their work. The other 72%, they put them in two buckets. They were either compartmentalizers or they were onlookers. And so the compartmentalizers are those ones that they go to church, but Sunday looks a whole lot different than Monday.
Yeah.
And there's no connection.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I think it's because they really do not feel like there's a calling. Like you mentioned, they feel like, well, I'm not a missionary or pastor.
Yeah.
So God doesn't care about this work.
Right.
So all it is to me is make as much money as I can.
Yeah.
And if I want to be a good Christian, maybe I'll just give it away. But
Yeah.
you know, but they don't connect the fact that God cares even about how we conduct business.
Well, and the fascinating thing, my experience was on the East Coast, very labor-intensive company. So we got to employ lots of blue-collar people, a lot of people that hadn't had college education, some people that didn't even have a high school education.
Yeah.
But when you have a platform, when you're somebody's employer, you have an ability to speak into their life in a way that a pastor can't.
Absolutely.
And all of a sudden, you can actually start speaking truth, and you can change people's lives because all of a sudden, you're paying them and you're telling them actually, like, what the Lord has for you is much better than what you'd have for yourself.
Yeah.
And it's just incorporating your faith into work. I mean, it's like I can't imagine doing it any other way because it's so powerful.
Well, and it's the best mission field we have available to us because so many people spend more than 45% of their waking hours in the workforce, and so that's where their deep relationships are.
Yeah.
And that's where the opportunity is that if we are modeling and living out, like you were just talking about, then we have tremendous influence. And that's what I've always loved about working with, the small business world is that every year, I think it's Gallup that does a survey on institutions and how people perceive them. And small business is always at the top. Big business is pretty low, but church is even lower.
Is it? Oh my goodness.
But the people that are most respected are the small business entrepreneurs in our communities. And so they have tremendous influence. And so if we can shine our light there, then boy, it makes a difference.
And Kansas City is an entrepreneurial city.
Yes.
I mean, people ask from around the country, what is Kansas City known for? And there's things that Kansas City are known for, but mostly it's very entrepreneurial. There's a lot of entrepreneurs here.
A ton.
That's great.
When you're working with these business owners or in communication with them, and they're kind of thinking like, sure, I have faith and I've run this business for the last 10, 20 years, but like, how do I even take a step into integrating it? Like my culture is culture's a hard thing, right?
Yes, it is.
It's set, and how do you help them engage? Where do you start?
Yeah, a starting point oftentimes is we developed a self-assessment tool that we call our leading assessment. And so they can go through that and it will score them in key areas so that whenever they get the results back, they can see the gaps and see areas. And then we direct them to some free ebooks to get started in the areas that may help shore up whatever those weaknesses are. But what we see is a lot of times when they go through that, it bubbles up stuff that they're like, I would have never thought that was something I should be doing. And so it really helps kind of surface that. And so that's a good starting point for a lot of people is just to plug into that, and then we can take them on a journey. So we can start plugging them into a group or into content, whatever might be appropriate for them.
And it is interesting as people have an experience with the Lord, like whether the CEO or the janitor, it changes them, right?
Right.
So like you can just envision that CEO or that business owner that's been in business for 30 years and like starts to have this softening towards others, and he apologized for the first time to somebody.
Yes.
That has worked, like you can just see like these cultural shifts where it's just like as people, it's just hugely impactful. So.
Yeah, especially I think whenever employees see the life change.
Right, and that's what I mean.
And
Yeah.
they start to see and actually hear forgiveness, and those are powerful tools. And just to help people with that is exciting.
And so one of the and we've got lots of things we can talk about, but I think talking about a little bit this wealth transfer, and wealth transfer sounds like a very generic term, right?
Right.
But a lot of what we see, I've never met a business owner that's going to die, right? They're
Right.
never going to die. It's pretty hilarious, actually. It's never part of the plan. And nobody's ever going to get sick. Nobody's going to become disabled. And so when we're thinking about, this generation, that are now in their 70s and 80s that are getting ready to either, sell their business, transfer it to the next generation, or pass away, and then their estate plan or whoever will take over.
To deal with it,
What are you seeing from a trend standpoint? And then let's just kind of unpack a little bit of, we're happy to talk about some of our experiences in there.
Sure.
Yeah,
I mean, certainly, they've been talking for a long time about this great wealth transfer, and I think it's actually happening slower than originally anticipated. But I think that's because people are pushing back retirement further and further for a variety of reasons. And, so it may not be happening as fast, but it's still happening, and it's happening in a big way.
Yeah, I joke with people, because somebody retire at 65, and you'll tell them, well, you might live another 30 years. And they just look at you like you're crazy. I'm like, we might not enjoy it, but you're going to live another 30 years.
That's right.
So it is like, because of medical, because of medical practice now, people are just living a lot longer, and they're a lot healthier, thankfully.
Yeah.
So,
so we've got an opportunity with a lot of people that are transferring, businesses and a lot of wealth, and the complexity of that is vast.
Yeah.
And so trying to help people navigate that is, it's a trend that I hear a lot more and more people asking those questions. And they don't even really know where to turn many times.
That's right.
Because if you think about it, there's a lot of aspects to it. I mean, you need financial people, you need legal people, you need a lot of different counselors.
You need
You need it all to
That's
figure
right.
it out.
Yeah.
And so I think people get lost because they may get hung up with one of those,
Right.
but not with the whole cadre of people that they actually need.
Yeah.
And so it ends up being a challenge for many.
Yeah.
Well,
And
there's
then-
also this reality that, for business owners, oftentimes that's a significant part of their identity.
Yes.
Right? It's been what they've been doing. It has been their DNA. And just the idea of, wait, like, I'm going to hand this off.
Yeah.
What does that even mean? What does that mean for me?
Right.
It can really be a scary thing. So there is definitely the legal, the numbers, the taxes, super important. The soft side, though, is oftentimes the inhibitor, right?
Absolutely.
It's the governor. It's the thing that's like, nope, or it's just.
I've told a lot of entrepreneurs that you need to realize that this has been your baby, and whenever you get your first offer, you're going to be offended.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care if they gave you a great offer.
Right.
That's right.
Usually you're going to be offended because it was never enough.
Oh, yeah.
Because you poured your whole life into this thing.
Yeah.
And, and I saw that early on in banking is, I remember I took a run at buying a small community bank at one time, and it was a friendly situation where they were asking me to be the one to put together an investment group. And I even let them drive the price.
Yeah.
But when they physically saw it on paper, they went ballistic.
Yeah.
They're like, how could you treat us this way?
That's
I'm
right.
like, I gave you your number. I don't get this. And that's when it really became real to me that this is just about the emotional side of it
without a doubt.
as the financial.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So how do you engage with business owners, with thinkers? Like, how do you start to talk about this conversation around succession and transfer and what does that look like?
From our standpoint, we don't get into, the stuff that you all would do and others would do. We're more there to try and coach and guide them on how would God look at this? What do you really want to accomplish? And is this really yours, or is this God's? Mm-hmm. And are you just the steward? Mm. And so we try and help bubble up the concepts that a lot of people don't spend a lot of time thinking about. Because a lot of times, let's face it, a lot of times they get a random phone call from a private equity group that says, I'm going to offer you tons of money for your business. Yeah. And they weren't prepared for that conversation. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so they get raced down a decision before they really are thinking it all the way through. And so we just try and help them pause and start talking about, okay, God owns it all. And if that's true, then God owns your business. How do you really want to navigate this? And what's the ultimate outcome that you want to see? Mm-hmm. And how's that going to impact the people around you to get them thinking differently about the whole conversation?
Yeah, I've been challenged recently, just kind of this thought of, we work with pretty successful people, and nobody uses the term legacy, right?
Right.
They don't want a legacy. Yeah. They don't think about themselves as anything special. They actually, a lot of them donate tons of money
right.
But it is interesting. I just started reading this new book by Bill High, and it changes it. It's challenging my thinking as it relates to legacy, right?
Yeah.
And so it is like this thought of like we're very Western in the way we think about things,
yes.
right? Like, I'm the founder. I'm going to sell my business, and then once it's liquid, then we'll go buy alternatives, or then we'll pass it on to the next.
Right.
But there's a lot of just one of the things that I've been thinking about lately is much more like, how do we incorporate more of the family? What does it look like? Because it is, and then we've been in some situations where there's a lot of family involved, and the fact that a lot of family is involved actually makes it messier.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
So there is like this, it's a little bit of a scale of like, because those families that don't have a clear successor for a business, at one level it's heartbreaking, because you feel like, man, grandpa or dad or grandma spent all their time building this thing.
Yeah.
And if there was a next generation, right? Or you think of all the success stories like Chick-fil-A, all the different, where there's been these amazing like corporations that go on for multiple generations.
Right.
And often it's the third or fourth generation that actually scales it.
Yeah.
Right? Well, they scale it, right? But then there is typically, so it is just interesting to think about, like, so it's heartbreaking when someone doesn't have somebody to pass it off to.
Right.
It's equally as heartbreaking when someone does have somebody to pass it off to and it's a train wreck.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
So it is interesting where often the easy answer is, I'm going to sell it and turn it into cash.
Yep.
And then we'll do whatever with the cash, because that business, for a lot of families, so much emotion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and then you get into the whole thing that you let's say you have 3 kids.
Yep.
And you carry this guilt around that I got to treat them each equally, but only one of them's talented in the business.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you end up destroying things by shoving them into something that they really don't want to do long term. They just think that you want them to.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to navigate those things with a clear mind, because there's so much baggage wrapped up in the whole conversation in a family business.
Oh, yeah. Well, and the easy analogy for me is, I grew up in South Central Nebraska in a farm community, and, typically there's 3 siblings, and one stays in farms.
Right.
And then the 2 move to town, right?
Yep.
Then dad dies, and it's like, well,
now what?
The 2 that are in town kind of just want their cash.
Yep.
And the guy that's farming it, or the person that's farming, it's like, they want to keep farming it, right?
Yep.
So all of a sudden there's like this illiquid versus liquid conversation.
Yep.
Are we all going to get our value out of it?
Uh-huh.
Do we literally have to sell the farm to make everybody whole?
Yeah.
And that's just an easy analogy, but it happens all the time.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
The other interesting part, so there is like the pure, private equity sale. Mm-hmm. There's kind of internal sale, external sale. But then the other thing that we see that is really interesting, and it is kind of the Lord at work, for lack of a better term, is the amount of generosity that business owners have.
Oh, yeah.
got into a very interesting conversation with a gentleman that is from Pakistan, and he's a computer engineer, PhD, like brilliant guy. And he was asking, I was very interested in what he was doing because he works in semiconductors and I love technology. Okay. And he was asking what I did for a living. And I explained to him what I did for a living. And a lot of what we do is we help people make charitable gifts, right? Or we help people plan for their charitable donation, that kind of thing. And he was, for lack of a better term, flabbergasted when I told him about the generosity of the people that we work with.
Yeah.
Because it's a foreign concept in most places, right?
Yeah.
But we work with some super successful families that are doing really amazing things from a business standpoint, and often they're very, very generous.
Yes.
And so it's a very interesting juxtaposition, if you will, of like, you know, because there's the amount of blood, sweat, and tears that goes in to build that business.
Yeah.
But then at the other end, you know, a lot of times toward the end of life or when they're getting older, then they're thinking about how do I, for lack of a better term, bless others, bless the community, bless these nonprofits that or ministries that I'm interested in. Yeah. So it is interesting to, and I mean, quite frankly, just a privilege to walk alongside some of these people.
Well, and walking with those people in ways, looking towards, you know, an event that's going to happen, you can help prepare them beforehand and save a lot of tax, be extremely generous. Yeah. But unfortunately, a lot of advisors do not consider the generosity piece. Yeah. I remember my wife and I, with the very first will we hired an attorney to do, you know, we went in with our mindset, well, he had his cookie cutter way of doing it, got done, and he handed me this plan. I'm like, wait a minute, we never had a conversation about generosity.
Yeah.
And it was not even in the plan, and it wasn't even a question in the plan. And I'm like, well, that wasn't who we are. That's not what we wanted out of this. And so, you know, I think it's great whenever we can help advise people that there are tools, there's different ways as they're making these transitions. And, you know, and I've talked with a lot of business people that have actually used, you know, donor advised funds for the succession and transition to be able to help pass businesses on.
Oh, yeah. That's super powerful.
Well, and being aware of it also early, even if you're not thinking about selling your business, because you're right, that phone call happens. I mean, the sale seems to take forever, but then it also happens really fast, right? It's always like, okay, we want to sign in 6 weeks. And, you know, some of those gifts have to happen before the sale or before there's a enforceable contract. So, yeah, it is amazing, though, John. I'll just kind of second what you said. It's like the amount of clients we worked with that are just incredibly generous is so heartwarming, and it's part of the why I love the work, and it's really fun to see.
And you mentioned earlier, John, I love it when the families are intentional with their own family, that they want to train and equip them, you know, and I've had the pleasure of working with some of those families that they've went to great lengths to figure out how are we going to equip the next generation to do this well. And that's not an easy thing to do because you got, you know, especially if you got a bunch of different kids or grandkids, they're all different. They're all coming from different angles, and they may not be in the same place spiritually at that moment. Right. And so to figure out how are we going to train them and navigate this in a way that we feel like we're being good stewards of passing this on.
Well, it's also, you know, we were talking to John Doherty in a previous podcast about estate planning and thinking through like how he said clients come in and it's somewhat transactional, right? It's like, come in, here's a document, we'll decide the positions, we'll execute, we'll move on, right? And like this work is not transactional. It is multi-generational, right? It is not like we're going to sit down and have one conversation about our core values, you'll understand them, and then we'll move on. It's like you have to have a will to keep coming back to that conversation and to guide it over time.
Well, the other thing that's interesting is, you know, and I just credit you and others like you in Kansas City that have been so vocal about charitable giving and kind of faith at work, you know, and so for years and years and years, we've felt like it was successful if we brought up somebody making a charitable gift, if we helped somebody make a charitable gift. But kind of, you know, 20 years into my practice now, and really there's this new experience we're having. And where historically our succession planning was really on the personal business side of things, right? And then charity was kind of a tag on.
Right.
But with what we're seeing is like there's actually going to be a need for both, where there's going to need to be succession on the personal side, whether that's business or investments or, but then on the charitable side also, a lot of times when there are large exits, people end up with a lot of money in a donor advised fund or supporting organization or a private foundation.
Right.
All of a sudden now we actually need a succession plan on that side as well.
Right.
And so it is this thing where, again, like it's this beautiful coalescence of those two things, where it is a lot of times founders are very interested in their business.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are very interested in ministry or their community. And so the idea of creating a succession plan for a family that's both on the business side of things and the charitable side of things, I mean, it is part of the benefit of our role in the universe is we get to have this experience along with our clients, right?
Right.
And so it is like it changes the way that we think about our business. It's a way that it's just like it's a huge gift to be able to, again, just quite frankly, be ministered to by business owners, by our own clients.
Yeah, and I love the entrepreneurial world because if you cast vision for them and they get it, they just do it.
Yeah,
I mean, they just
sure.
jump in and say, let's go.
Yeah.
And I remember I was asked to speak down in Dallas to a group of CEOs. There's like a dozen CEOs. And I felt led to share a story with them about a guy named Stanley Tam that wrote a book called God Owns My Business. And Stanley, way back in the 1940s, gave away 100% of his business that ultimately ended up funding over $200 million worth of evangelistic efforts around the world because he had the guts to do that.
Yeah.
And I was sharing this guy's story with these entrepreneurs, and I was just amazed because they got so into it so quickly that 3 of them on the spot said, "How do I do it?" I'm like, "What do you mean?"
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, "No, I want to know. Who do I call
Right.
to start this process?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "That's really cool."
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
we work with a family that the reason we work with him is because he called his donor advised fund person and said, "I want to give my entire balance sheet away. How do I do it?"
Yeah.
And so then we got in touch with him, and we get to help him
That's cool.
give away his balance sheet.
Yeah,
And
that's so cool.
it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So,
It's amazing.
yeah.
Yeah.
So from a standpoint of like part of, what I think part of it is like the idea of like planting the seeds of getting a succession plan in place early for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
But then it is also cheering on of getting that done, because often what we see is people get excited about it or they think about a succession plan,
And then it withers.
but then a big sale happen, whatever it is, like their business, because the people that we're talking with love business.
Yep.
Often the fact that they love business means that they don't take care of their other things, right? So I think anything that you can do to just encourage people to get that succession plan in place, even if it's only 85% proficient, it's better than nothing.
Oh, yeah.
I used to do some stuff with Vic Panis here in town, who's well-known estate planner, does a lot of succession plans, and he would always say, like, a succession plan sitting on your shelf is no good, right? And so he used to do this thing with business owners that he called the fire drill. So the fire drill would be like, all right, Rick, you died in your sleep last night. What's going to happen in your business today?
Yeah.
Well,
Scary question.
if you don't have a plan,
Yep.
people are going to start looking for the exits because
That's right.
they want security, right?
Yes, absolutely.
If you have something in place and they know, hey, if Rick doesn't show up today, this is the play we're going to run,
Yeah.
then you've got a chance. I mean, you're not selling your business pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
You're not losing. I mean, it's just like, so that succession plan, like in writing, is better than nothing.
Right.
But in writing, orchestrated, communicated, well thought out.
Yeah.
I mean, again, like back to my point earlier, it's like, you never met a business owner who's going to die, right?
Right. Yeah, and usually the best succession plans, are spread out over a period of years.
Yeah.
That you're preparing your team for the future.
That's right.
And so that requires, that willingness to admit that, I'm not going to live forever,
Right.
and I need to get this started.
Yeah.
And then we have to step it out and figure out, well, what's this going to look like? And so that there is that plan, but so many people just table it.
Yeah.
But I think the other part of it is what I see a lot is they get so wrapped up in the succession plan for the business, if they're even doing that they forget about themselves.
For sure.
And I had a good friend that went through that, and he, for 4 or 5 years, he stepped out a great plan, did a wonderful job of transitioning his company. And I called him when it was all over and done with, and he said, Rick, I did such a great job of handling the transition and succession plan for my business that I did a terrible job for me personally. He said, so now I'm sitting at home and the phone no longer rings.
Right.
Nobody cares about my decisions.
That's right.
And I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And he said, I just never even paused to think about after the deal, what's for me now.
Oh, yeah.
And I see that a lot, is a lot of people just get lost in that. And so they really don't have a clear cut plan as to what God might have for them after the succession.
A plan, a purpose. I mean, there's both, right?
Yes.
Like this idea of there's a lot of things to take care of on the business side. There's a lot of things to take care of the personal side.
Yep.
But then just from a pure heart level, you've poured yourself into this thing for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever it is.
Yep.
That thing is not going to be there anymore.
Right.
What's your purpose?
Yes. Oh,
so it's
hard.
If you have a bigger purpose,
Yeah.
then the transition's a beautiful thing, and you go on and do, but if it's not,
Oh, yeah.
Rick, in your work in this space, what do you feel like kind of that message to those business owners? I mean, you've alluded to it, but I mean, kind of speak to when you're thinking with these business owners and the core message for their succession, for their wealth transfer.
Well, I think the core message is for us as followers of Jesus, it's not about them. It really is about what God's design is and what His plan is. And that's a hard thing to get from your head to your heart. But to let them see that, okay, what does God want for this? And I need to be very prayerful about this, because this is a stewardship issue that I really need to be a good steward. And am I going to be a good steward if I'm just charging down a path to get a deal done and I'm not really considering all the fallout? And, I think what breaks my heart is I see a lot of situations where somebody's done a great job of building a strong faith-based culture in their company, and the employees love working there. It's a great environment. And then it gets sold for top dollar to somebody who comes in and completely guts the place.
Yep.
And it no longer exists the way that it was, and it no longer honors God.
Yeah.
And so people need to think it all the way through to figure out, well, what does God really want? And each individual is going to be different. I mean, God may want you to sell for top dollar so that you can be generous, and that's your call in the future. But you do need to consider, what's the impact on the lives of the people that I've been pouring into, and that I've been called to be a shepherd to these people. And so if I truly view my work as I'm a shepherd over this group of people, and if I cash out and I sell it to somebody that's going to come in and just utterly gut this place, how good of a shepherd really was I? And so just trying to help people think through those kinds of issues, I think, is a great starting place for them to at least be working through it. It's just so hard.
And it is interesting. A lot of times there's a process that we help take families through, and we use the language of a finish line, right?
Yep.
So are you at the finish line? Are you 200% at the finish? Like, where are you in relation to the finish line?
Yeah.
And often that exit, a lot of times that exit is way beyond the finish line.
Yes.
So could you take less, but your culture survive, right? Could you take less and your legacy survive?
Yes.
There are times where you can maximize your value, and both those things happen.
Right.
But it is just like taking that into account in particular, again, back to the stewardship, it's not just about the dollars. It's not just about the balance sheet.
Right.
It's about the relationships and the thing that you spent so much time on.
Well, and I've been encouraged over, I'd say, the last 4 or 5 years. I've noticed that there are more and more companies that are popping up that this is on their heart. Mm-hmm. And so there's more and more Christian-led private equity firms. Mm-hmm. There's ESOP companies that will coach and help you through that are Christian-led, that they're going to try and help make sure you retain the culture. And so there's a lot of opportunity that I didn't feel like there used to be as much of. Yeah. And so there's now money out there that can help bridge the gap and hopefully also help you retain the culture that you may have built in your business. Mm-hmm. And you can still mess it up, and they may still deceive you and end up being about the money and you didn't realize it. But at least having some of those options, I think, give a lot of entrepreneurs more options than they had before.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the people that we've seen that are successful, or the people that we've worked with that are successful, there's a lot of times where they were, for lack of a better term, a chosen successor.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. So if I have an internal candidate that is going to preserve my culture, it may not maximize the dollar that I get, but it does, maintain the culture that I created. Yeah. A lot of times that's worth it to people. Mm-hmm. And it is like that successor, a lot of times, for lack of a better term, is favored, or they get a sweetheart deal. Right. But a lot of times that's worth it. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I talked with a guy last year that he started up a company that what he kept seeing was ESOPs oftentimes would take the owner would take a haircut in order to sell it to the employees. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And because of that, oftentimes they wouldn't do it, and they'd go sell to the highest bidder, and it would end up gutting a company that could have carried on, with the culture that was already in existence there. Well, this company, what they chose to do is to try and help that and specifically because they wanted to help fellow believers keep and retain the culture. Mm-hmm. And so they have an interesting model where they said, okay, we figure out what fair market value would be if they do go out and sell it, just beyond the employees. And then they actually front the money for the difference. Okay. And they said, we put up the money so that seller can get out at what he would have gotten out with otherwise. And they take warrants on the back end that after the initial ESOP debt is paid off, then they get paid on the back end with these warrants. Oh, wow. And so it's a unique way to try and help these owners that are tempted with the money of saying, you can still do this, but you don't have to take a haircut on it.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, there's tons. I mean, we've got a couple clients who have done some private equity investments with some that are more what they call more permanent capital. Mm-hmm. So we're going to buy this business, but we're not going to flip it in 5 years or 7 years. We're going to, quite frankly, just hold it in our portfolio. Yeah. Yeah. And then the other thing that we're seeing seems like there's a lot more family offices out there that are buying operating businesses. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And there's sometimes where that can also be a nice exit because the family office a lot of times could be much more humane, be a lot more, and a lot of times they're more worried about cash flow than they are about flipping a business.
Right.
So.
Yeah. That's great.
Do you have anything else, Cam? Anything else we should chat about?
I mean, I think, something I've heard you say is it's kind of a kingdom-minded transition. And, if you could maybe take just a couple minutes and speak to that maybe as a closing thought, it might be helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just kind of goes back to that stewardship thing that, if we want to be kingdom-minded, it's because, we're serving a great God that it's His. Yeah. And we're just supposed to steward that well. And so that means that we need to be diligent about planning. I mean, like you said a couple of times, John, is nobody thinks they're going to die, so they never get around to it. So we've got to be willing to have those conversations and plan in advance and be diligent in that planning. And then, then working through, how are we going to sell this? I mean, who do we want to sell it to? What do we want the ultimate outcome to be so that we know what the culture is going to be like afterwards? And is God going to be pleased whenever this is all said and done? And so just to helping people take a little different lens to it and say, okay, I don't want to do this the way that the world does it.
Yeah.
What would God have me do with this? And when we do that, I think that God's pleased, and the people usually that you leave behind are pleased because they have a better opportunity to actually feel like they have a culture that was retained.
Yeah, sure. I know we kind of mentioned this up front, but just as a reminder, like if a business owner is listening to this and saying, I want to go seek more of your your group, connect with you, how do they do that?
Yeah, they can visit our website at unconventionalbusiness.org. And so unconventionalbusiness.org will give them lots of resources. They can, sign up for our daily devotional and take that leading assessment that I mentioned earlier as a good starting point.
Yeah. And we can put some of those links in the podcast as well in the notes so that people can find you.
So, yeah. Awesome.
So, Cam, thanks for helping host today.
Sure.
Rick, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else you want to share?
No, I mean, I'm just thrilled to have this kind of a conversation and to know that people listening in are going to have an opportunity to hear a different perspective on succession.
Yeah. Get your succession plans done. Well, Rick, again, just thank you for your time today. And if you enjoyed our conversation, please like and subscribe and share it with somebody you know. Thank you so much, and have a great day. Thank you for joining us on the Story Lens podcast. If you're navigating complex financial decisions, we're here to help. We know your story is anything but ordinary, and that's why we start there, because the right solutions are as unique as you are.
StoryOne Family Office, LLC, or StoryOne is a registered investment advisor, RIA, registered with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC. Registration as an investment advisor does not imply a certain level of skill or training, and the content of this communication has not been approved or verified by the United States Securities and Exchange Commission or by any state securities authority. StoryOne renders individualized investment advice to persons in a particular state only after complying with the state's regulatory requirements or pursuant to an applicable state exemption or exclusion. All investments carry risk, and no investment strategy can guarantee a profit or protect from loss of capital. Past performance is not indicative of future results. This podcast is intended for informational purposes only and is not intended as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor shall this be construed as advice for the financial needs of any individual. StoryOne is not permitted to offer, and no statements made during this podcast should constitute legal or tax advice. The information contained herein has been compiled by independent third parties, have been obtained from sources who are believed to be reliable. However, accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by StoryOne.